you attended the visioning workshop for this project, welcome back. Thank you for continuing to participate on this project. For those of you new to this project in process, that's okay too. There are no prerequisites for participating in tonight's design workshop. So we'd like to welcome folks who are new to the process as well. As many of you already know, the county has hired a planning and design firm, Decker Parrish Sabatini, to assist us in creating this downtown master plan, as well as a downtown master plan for White Rock. And they're going to guide us through tonight's design workshop. And so without further ado, I'd like to hand it off to Will Gleason. He's a planner as well as a principal with Decker Parrish Sabatini.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for everyone for joining us this evening. We're kind of getting used to this format, but I expect we might have a few bumps along the road this evening. So bear with us, and we really appreciate your participation in this. So a few housekeeping notes. You'll be muted for the first part of the presentation. And if you have questions, use the chat function. I think most of us are getting more familiar with that. You can see that down at the bottom of your screen. And then as far as there's our little easy guide to where the chat function is. It's really helpful for us, and we'll be monitoring that. So our schedule this evening is to quickly go through this overview, the project overview, do a survey with you, and then talk a little bit about some of the previous planning efforts, some of what we see are requirements for retail stores, precedent examples, and then the bulk of our time will be in breakout groups. So with a report back after that. So we know this is a time commitment, and we really appreciate your participation in this. And even if you're only able to join us for part of this time, that's fine too. So, so what are the goals of this workshop? Well, we really want to use this to help us guide our criteria. We're not trying to figure out the last detail of what buildings look like or exactly where sidewalks are going, but we're really trying to figure out overall kind of framework and goals for the downtown master plan. And we will use this to get a preferred concept that will be part of really the key exhibit in the master plan. So, so I think most of you have seen our team before. This is just a slide that shows the different pieces. We have people on tonight from EPS. Dan Guimond is on. And we're also keeping Myers, McCready, and Myers in the loop, as well as Bohannon, Houston. So this is our timeline. You can see that we are in our design workshop here in the middle of our phase one, and we're going to come up with some draft concepts after this, leading to a preferred concept, and really trying to finish this top bar, the blue boxes, by the end of the year. And we're also going to start on our update of the zoning code here during the fall as well. So we'll have two parallel efforts going on throughout the rest of this year, and then the bulk of next year will be focused on the zoning update.
All right. Thank you, Will.
Rena, take it away.
Yes. So if you've joined us for the last workshop, that was based mainly on a survey type framework. This time we only have a couple of questions, and so if you all could pull up a browser. This time we can't do it through texting. It's just like with browser typing. So pull up your browser either on your computer or your phone and type in pollev.com, and then we have it highlighted here in blue, so it would be pollev.com and then -DPS design for a couple of questions. It won't take too much time, but we think those are pretty fun and a little interactive, and we can learn a little bit about everybody's thought So yeah, pull ev.com-dps design into your browser and we'll jump right in it. And it should have the web address on top of each slide also. So if you miss this, you should still be able to participate in a second. All right, I'm gonna go to the next, if it lets me. All right, so what is your age range? And we got for the survey that we had posted a while ago on the website, we had a pretty good representation of the group 25 to 44. And it looks very similar to what that representation looked like. But this is always interesting to just see who we are getting and who we are missing. There's generally not under 18 years old represented. They probably have better stuff to do. It's a little too nerdy, probably. All right, cool. Looks like the largest group so far is 45 to 65. And we'll move on to the next slide. And it's loading. Okay, so where are you from? So you can just drop a pin basically on the map. If you're from White Rock, I apologize, just put it to the side somewhere. It would have been very tiny if we would have tried to like pull the whole county in. So we needed to kind of focus in on the Los Alamos townside area. All right, there's some pins dropping. There's some people from North Mesa and close to downtown, the downtown area. Very cool. We'll give it another second so you can find your house or street. Doesn't have to be super accurate.
It's like the White Rock people are down in the lower right corner. There.
Yeah, at least 4.
All right, I'm gonna go to the next slide here. Okay, so this one is, oh, it looks like there's already pins that dropped. Where do you see the greatest development opportunities in Los Alamos downtown? And there's the old Smith site that got some hits already. And then the...
You in Bathtub Row?
Yep. And then some at BP Road, looks like. A couple on the south side of Trinity.
Yeah, a couple in the new marketplace parking lot there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. Where do you see the center of downtown Los Alamos? So that's really, where do you like see the like activity center where you have like most of the activity happening, the center of gravity? And I guess that's, yeah, Starbucks is always the center of gravity.
Bunch at Ashley Pond.
And the brewery.
And the
A lot on Central. That's not surprising.
Well, a lunch. Cool. It looks like there's a bit of agreement, at least in the general area.
One near the Municipal Center.
Yep. All right. We'll move on. There's 2 more slides. What do you see as good location for residential uses? So there's the comp plan and also the goals that we kind of verified during the visioning workshop really are asking for higher density downtown. And so if you had to place it, where would we put that? looks like DP Road got some hits.
The old hotel site.
Yeah. Smith.
Smith's, yeah.
There's a lot more distributed.
Yeah.
Along Trinity there, the underutilized property.
Yeah. There's definitely room for infill or redevelopment. All right. And all right, we'll move on to the next slide, which is not advancing. Here it goes. So the same thing, but in this case, commercial uses. So if there was more commercial uses, where should they be concentrated? And obviously they could be mixed use. They don't have to be purely.
And commercial can be retail or can be restaurant or can be office.
Yeah. All right, there's also a fair distribution going on. Very cool. Okay, we are moving on to the next section here, and those are the previous planning efforts. And as you may or may not know, there was a downtown master plan created in 2000. It was never adopted. However, the development regulations found their way into the zoning code, and that plan tried to introduce new urbanism development strategies into the code to create a true center. And it included future development strategies, infrastructure design recommendation, and regulating plan with standards for each building. And so the last piece made it into the zoning code to a certain extent. And it is an interesting plan to revisit, just because obviously they also went through a planning process and looked at the downtown area. And it is always good to revisit those strategies to make sure that we are not disregarding all the effort that has been done and rather building on what has been done. And so they identified 4 areas. This one here they called the Civic Center. That's the Ashley Pond area, and then further to the north with the library and the senior center, and then Fuller Lodge. And they envisioned there to be the cultural and civic center of Los Alamos, and to add a network of pedestrian pathways, a pavilion and band shell to really host more events at Ashley Pond. The next area was the so-called Main Street area. And what is interesting here is that they didn't see the Main Street going along Central so much, but going north-south along, what is that street?
I think it's 15th Street.
15th? I don't even know whether that street has a name right now, because it's
Between 20th and 15th Street, yeah. Between 20th and 15th.
Yeah.
And just to let people know that the yellow is generally indicating residential and the red indicating commercial uses. So
I think they actually have that flipped, Will. Because they had like.
oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. Those are generally the zoning colors, but you're right. They have it red being residential in this case. You can see the smaller footprints for that.
Yeah. But so that Main Street basically goes from Central Park Square down to the rim, and they added an amphitheater down at the rim. And they wanted to have basically 3 different anchor developments to activate that Main Street. And one of them was a performance art center, a department store, and then the amphitheater. And then they facilitated that densification basically with 2 parking structures. That there's one on Central and one kind of
North of Trinity.
north of Trinity. So that was the Main Street concept, and then the next one was the East End. So that area was between Central and Trinity and 15th and 4th Street. And they envisioned to create a new road pattern in here and line the streets with infill housing development and have the parking located behind the building. And this one they envisioned to be anchored by an institution and learning and research center. And there's a couple of public squares that they included as well. And then the 4th one, the South Rim one, is basically north of Trinity and goes all the way over to DP Road from
South
20.
Trinity. Yeah.
Yes, south, sorry. And they envisioned the rim to be framed or to have like a string of housing and then have a central park and have more of the commercial uses going along Trinity. And obviously that didn't happen. The new Smith went in, and so far, at least, there's not a lot of housing down there. And then, so in terms of zoning, as I was saying earlier, the form-based code component of this downtown master plan made it into the zoning code. And we will be looking at that when we are looking at the zoning in phase 2 to see whether this makes sense and what needs to be updated in order to encourage development where you want to encourage development. All right, and then we'll talk about retail store requirements.
Yeah, I guess I would just make one observation about the previous downtown plan is that it was very aspirational. It had a lot of big ideas, but it really was lacking market reality in terms of some of the recommendations, particularly the amount of structured parking, the amount of infrastructure restructuring that was implied in the concept. So certainly in terms of this plan, our firm EPS is on as an economic and market consultant to try and provide a little more economic reality to the plan. We've been working in Los Alamos for over 20 years on retail and other types of development feasibility work. And as those of you who live there know, the biggest challenge is the size of the community and its lack of growth over the last 20 years. And additionally, the amount of leakage to the valley, particularly Santa Fe, in terms of how much retail development is down there. Flipping to the next slide. The other thing that is going on, and this was developed particularly for White Rock, because the challenge in White Rock is there really is not enough households to support a lot of a lot of larger national store retailers in the community, because when they were developed in the 60s, the grocery store was 25,000 square feet and you only needed, 3,500 households to support a grocery store. Although today the stores are more than double that size, and the amount of sales that are required are quite a bit larger as well. So, a full-size supermarket on the top line, 60,000 requires about 6,000 households. About at 2.5, about 15,000 people. A natural grocer or, you know, a Sprouts or somebody like that, you know, needs about 7,500 households. So, I think the bottom line is certainly the new Smith's Marketplace has, you know, is the largest store in the community and really accounts for, you know, our estimate or something like 60% of the retail sales in the community as a whole. So it's a good thing in the sense that it provided a lot more retail than was in the community before, but it's also a challenging thing in terms of a limitation on the amount of other national retailers that might develop in the community. So I think looking forward, compared to the last couple of decades, we're still seeing a fairly challenging retail market for national retailers, but there's a lot of opportunities and growth for food and beverage and local retailers, and working those into mixed-use projects, which I think is kind of the focus of the commercial component of the project. It's not really shown on the slide here, but we'll talk about it more as a team as we move on here. We do think there's significant opportunities for additional residential development in the downtown area, higher density, both for sale and for rent housing. Thanks, Katrina.
And I think just to add on to what Dan's saying and to his comments about the prior master plan, I think that they really tried to figure out the solutions to the downtown just by design. And that our approach here is really still incorporating design, the overall framework of the downtown, but really looking to market analysis to help guide what that mix is in terms of housing and retail and dining, restaurant opportunities in the downtown area. And we're not trying to figure out where a restaurant's going to go or not go, or where housing is exactly going to go, but really figuring out what is the market demand and having that inform the overall master plan. So I hope that helps going forward with our exercise this evening. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about precedent examples, right, Katrina?
Yes, and Jessica, take it away. And I don't know how this blue line ended up on the screen, but we have to live with it for a little bit. Sorry about that.
Okay, so we just wanted to talk for a minute about some typical kind of development types that we anticipate might come up for the later workshop. And so we have a series of slides here for you, and just to point out a couple things, on the very top left there, you see that little building footprint. And for each one of these precedent types, it's just going to give you a typical example of what that could look like in terms of building dimensions, unit counts if there are units within the development type, typical size, and the total square footage of that particular example. And some of these images are representative, again, of just the typical development. The idea is not really to get too hung up in terms of design style and even development intensity, because the development intensity on all of these can vary, and obviously we will make sure that any proposed development will be within scale of what you all would like to see. So the first series is going to be about housing. So the first one here is the townhouse. We're all familiar with townhouses. They're separate units that are usually rented or owned and share at least one or two walls. They're typically at least 2 stories, but in some cases they can be 3 or even 4 stories. Next one, Katrina.
Yes.
The next one is micro units. So this is what we typically think of when we think of studio apartments. The difference here is that they have oftentimes they have common kitchens or gathering spaces, and they can really come in a variety of forms. So they can look similar to kind of the townhouse development type, or they can look more like what we would think of typical multifamily apartments. And then the multifamily, so these can be either apartments that are rented or condos. Generally, they are double loaded, so you have a main corridor within the building and apartments on either side of it. Again, these can be anywhere from 2 stories up, depending on what is appropriate for the site, and they generally have some kind of shared amenity space within the building or site. But then you have live work. These are generally more in urban areas like downtowns. So the idea here is that you have a really small kind of space for a home occupation or a home office of some sort, with living spaces either tucked behind or above it. And then the mixed use. So in this case, we're talking about vertical mixed use. So you'll have retail or office on the bottom floor with housing above, and then there's generally, again, some kind of amenity space within the building. And then moving on to commercial. So micro commercial is something that is definitely becoming more popular lately, and you can really see some innovative design that starts to happen with these. So here in Albuquerque, for example, we're seeing a lot of these shipping container kind of modular developments that are popping up in parking lots, or what were generally considered to be vacant or underutilized lots. They're pretty small in terms of the units, the retail units themselves, and they often have shared dining or common spaces. And then your typical commercial pad. So this is, you know, your Starbucks or some kind of fast food restaurant. You may have a drive-through associated with them, and then you're going to have parking that is located on the site, generally to the side or front of the building. And then your commercial strip. So these are long, usually linear buildings that have shared walls with individual commercial tenants. It's kind of that typical traditional commercial development. And again, you have shared parking within these facilities. Oftentimes they're actually in front of the building, right off of the road. And I believe this is the last one. So this is a lifestyle center. It's typically smaller than what you would think of a suburban mall, but they're in some cases retrofitting urban malls to be more of what is considered a lifestyle center. So it's various commercial tenants within one site. But the big difference here is that there's a big emphasis on pedestrian amenities. So oftentimes you'll see splash pads or big kind of pedestrian corridors that have seating and concert spaces. There's shared parking, but oftentimes it's tucked to the edge of the commercial development. So there's a cluster of commercial buildings around an amenity space, and the parking happens to the side or within a parking structure. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Katrina.
Cool. Thanks, Jessica. All right, so we just wanted to really briefly touch on the outcomes of the visioning workshop. So we had 2 workshops, one for White Rock and one for Los Alamos, and we basically used the downtown, the comprehensive plan goals that pertain to downtown as a starting point. And the goal of that meeting was to identify goals for the downtown areas. And so we started out with ranking the existing goals. So this is a slide from Los Alamos where the housing goals were ranked. And then we were asking participants to identify any goals that weren't considered in the comprehensive plan. And following that, we went back and created new goals, or revised the existing goals and added goals accordingly. And we got quite a lot of feedback during the visioning workshop itself. For White Rock, we had 87 people. For Los Alamos, we had 104. And in total, we received about 5,000 survey responses during and after the meeting. So we had the same survey basically that we did during the meeting up on the website. and it resulted in 5,000 survey responses. And so we took those and created a set of draft goals that we then shot out again to a follow-up survey, and we received about 140 participants for White Rock and 270 for Los Alamos, with about 10,000 survey responses. And it was similar to what we had asked during the meeting. So we asked people to just identify the goals that they felt were the most important ones, and then identify anything that we still didn't consider. And so we have now a draft set of goals, which by no means are like finished or done or anything. They are still very much in progress, especially because we are still having this meeting. And after this meeting, we will be sitting down and looking at everything that we received and revise those goals again, and then give you another opportunity to look at those. But the goals that we identified during the meetings are going to serve as starting point for our meeting today. And yeah, this was the age range that we were talking about earlier. So it's kind of similar to the age range that we received today. That was for the survey that we had sent out to just identify who's participating. And so I'm going to go over these goals really quickly. We highlighted some of the goals and action items in yellow that we feel pertain to the master plan. So there's basically some of the goals that are in the master plan that we can translate into the physical environment are highlighted here. Then there is some goals that will be addressed during the zoning code update with the revision of the development standards. And then there's some that we cannot address with the master plan, the physical framework or the zoning code, but that need to be addressed with like separate ordinances or through other channels. And the master plan is going to keep those goals and then just identify the pathway that needs to be taken in order to implement these goals. So this one here for urban form and design, Central was identified to serve as a vibrant Main Street, and in this case, there's action items that support that to say create protected spaces for outdoor dining, so creating in-between spaces where people can sit and enjoy coffees and beers and whatever. And then there was also a suggestion to study Central to serve as a pedestrian mode during specific periods of time, and then orient buildings along Central to get a street wall, so to really create a nice pedestrian experience. The next goal is enrich the vibrancy of downtown through design, public art, public spaces, historic preservation, cultural space, and programming. And while that is a mouthful, there's a lot of different strategies that can obviously fall under these. And some of them are already addressed with the wayfinding and signage program that's underway and streetscape treatments that have already been done, but obviously there's always room for improvement. So today we can identify areas where there needs to be improvements to the streetscape, for example. And then integrate community art into public spaces. That's also something that we could help to identify where that could go. And then revitalize downtown to become a pedestrian-friendly mixed-use area. And an action item under this to integrate accessible mixed-use live workspaces into downtown. And for this one, again, we would identify areas today where to place those. And I apologize that there's a lot of goals. I'm just trying to touch on some of those that we can consider when we go through the exercises later, so that we have them in the back of our mind when we think about the urban form and the framework for downtown. So this one here is increased density downtown. So obviously, if you desire to have more housing downtown, where would we put that? And then promote maintenance and enhancement of housing stock quality. There's, as I said earlier, there is some that we cannot address with the physical framework today, but like the one, explore strategies within the zoning code to increase the supply of attainable housing or short-term and temporary housing. There is things that we can look at during the zoning code update to develop strategies to help bring that about. And transportation, there was a goal to create safe, efficient, and convenient pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. And here was an action item to examine Trinity to figure out whether we can have more safe pedestrian and bicycle crossings and how to do that. So today we could identify where the best place would be for that, and then create accessible, user-friendly, and efficient multimodal system. And under that, we have a create a complete streets policy for all new rebuilt roadways. This again would be something that we can integrate into the development code update. So there's really two things for those goals. One that we can do with the physical framework, the other that we can do through the zoning update. And obviously that will be phase 2. So we are not ignoring that, but it will come in phase 2. And then we had another one here saying to have a downtown circulator bus. So we could today identify where a route for that circulator bus could be, or which type of amenities it should hit on its circular route. And then we have a create sustainable, accessible, efficient, and convenient parking options, create a centralized parking to promote a Park One strategy. So that's what the 2000 master plan also had in mind, was creating a centralized parking facility, and by doing so, freeing up space, surface parking, to have more infill. So there is always the trade-off. If you want to have more housing downtown, where does the parking go and how do you manage that? So that's again something that we can look at today. We have little footprints for parking garages and surface parking lots that we can move around and figure out where there is a good place to put the parking if we take it away to put something that we like there instead. And public spaces and streets. So create vibrant pedestrian downtowns that include a central gathering space. So here we are looking to create a central gathering space for food trucks and pop-up businesses. So is that Ashley Pond, or is there another space that we want for that? And so today we can identify areas for a plaza in addition to Ashley Pond, if that's the desire, to host these activities. And then provide inclusive public spaces that are geared toward all age groups, put in more amenities. And obviously the scale we are working on today is kind of large, so it's going to be hard to identify the location of a water fountain, for example, but if that's the desire, we can definitely put a little cross on the map and have that there. And there's another action item to add parklets and mini plazas, so we could identify areas to place that. Infrastructure obviously happens mostly underground, so it doesn't have the big effect on the physical or that framework that we are talking about. But we have these goals in here, and they will be carried forward, and we will be identifying implementation strategies for these as well. And sustainability, that is similar in some ways. It is harder in the physical framework to implement the sustainability goals, but those can definitely be something that are that will be considered during the zoning code update. So for example, the LID and green infrastructure to capture runoff, that could be something that is integrated in the development standards as something as requirements for the landscape requirements for new development, for example. All right, and last one, I apologize for this long section on goals. The last one on economic development, we have created a downtown area in which local businesses can thrive. And we've heard about the the challenges with the office floor occupation of ground floor spaces. And that is again something that we will probably not be able to address today or within the physical framework of the downtown master plan, but something that we will definitely look at during the development code update, because there is strategies that we could implement, and we will be looking at that and then proposing some strategies that we can then discuss and see how well they will work or not. Revitalize the downtown area of Los Alamos. Here, redevelop restaurant, retail businesses, and residential uses. And it says here along the Canyon Rim Trail, but it could be anywhere in Los Alamos. There's a lot of underutilized buildings or areas. So today we can identify these areas where there should be redevelopment or development, and we can put new buildings on there because the sky is the limit today. And then obviously we will have to drill down and make it so that it sticks in terms of market reality. All right, so that was very long, and I apologize. And we will be going to the fun part now. And so for the breakout groups, it will take us a couple of minutes to get everybody in the right breakout groups and have your facilitator with you. We will be working on a mirror board, which is kind of like a shared blackboard or whiteboard, not blackboard. And so bear with us for a couple of minutes. We will be having 3 groups. It looks like we have 47 attendees. So 3 groups we feel like makes sense. So we will be splitting you up in a second. In the breakout groups, your facilitator will basically walk you through, but I will just give you a very fast summary. We will be reviewing the goals, probably not too much because I already talked about them a lot. They are on your mirror board. So if you have a desire to look at them, just ask your facilitator and we can look at them. We will also put the PDF into the chat window so you can look at the goals there as well. The first step is going to be creating a bubble diagram. So we are going to kind of bubble the areas that we want to identify for certain uses. So for example, housing, where would we put that? We just bubble that in. The second step would be creating circulation. So as you saw in the 2000 master plan, they basically created a whole bunch of new roadways. And that may not be the most realistic thing, but at this stage in the planning phase, we can definitely do that. If we feel like an alignment is inhibiting the flow of pedestrians or traffic, we can redraw that at this point. The fourth step would be to place, yeah, sorry, Will.
Let me just interject on the circulation because there's a lot of chatter about the transit circulator on here.
Okay.
You can also include proposing changes or reaffirming existing circulation patterns for transit as well as for pedestrians and cyclists as well.
Yeah.
That's it. Back to you, Katrina.
Yeah, and I only pulled out that one goal. There's other goals that are asking to extend the schedule to weekends and stuff. So that was just one that would be easy to kind of create a circle somewhere. But yeah, there's more in terms of transportation or transit in the goals. So yeah, and if there's, we'll interject if there's any other questions that we need to address right now. Otherwise, we will be breaking into the breakout groups and discuss.
It looks like Greg White has a question.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so kind of like a two-part thing here. First, is tonight's meeting just for people that are on boards and commissions, or is it supposed to be open to the public too?
It's open to the public, and we had, it was advertised in the newspaper. The county has sent out a couple of notifications. We have it on the website, and we send out an email to the last.
Yeah, because the only way I ended up in the meeting was through the email that Linda sent me. And even then, it took me about 15 more minutes to figure out the only way I could join was copy and paste the meeting ID, because just trying to type it in doesn't work because they limit it to 7 digits typing it in. So I'm suspecting, and there wasn't any link for tonight's meeting on the county webpage, just the one back in September and October. So I'm suspecting that at 40 some odd participants, we probably, if we'd made it easier for the public to get into this meeting, probably would have double that number. The other thing is, from the list of things that you just went over and stuff, to really accomplish anything, I don't know how much we're going to accomplish tonight, because that list pretty much was like for an all-day conference kind of thing.
Oh yeah, and it's basically we are focusing on the physical development patterns basically, and we have some targeted questions. It is generally, these meetings take days, but because we had to switch it to an online environment, you can't ask people to sit on their computer for like 3 days. So we had to squish it into a much smaller time frame. And we are aware of that it is a lot to ask, but that's why we are trying to get through this really quickly so we can get into the working groups and see what we can accomplish there.
Yeah, and I think this is a good balance between making the best use of people's time. And then we'll also have other opportunities, Greg, for input as we develop the drafts. So, and as far as getting on the meeting tonight, apologies for that it was difficult for you, and I know it was probably difficult for others as well. We are doing our best to advertise and to make this accessible to everyone. So please, let's get into the groups.
Yeah, well, give me 1 more second. So we were at the development unit. So we have little models for those development units that Jessica went over earlier that we can place. And then at the end of our exercises, we identify strengths and weaknesses of each concept and go back into the groups. And now I am gonna get everybody in their groups. And let me just, it's gonna take a couple of minutes, as I was saying earlier. Okay. All right. Yeah, this will take about 5 minutes. And we will get there in a second. Sorry, there's always a lot of people.
So you're just randomly dividing people into groups.
Yeah, and then I have to find the facilitators so that they are in the right rooms, which I don't see them anywhere, which is weird. I'm gonna create these really quickly, and I'm gonna add the facilitators in a second. So when you end up in your room, we will have like a couple of minutes with lapse time.
So if you want to stand up and go get something to drink, this is a good time to do it.
Yes. Okay. Looks like we are all together again. Cool. I know the time went by really quickly, and it looks like everybody is muted right now, so you can unmute yourself, but let's have each volunteer from each group represent back to the larger group on their concept, and I'm gonna share this screen of their mirror board so you can walk us through. Let's start with group number 1, which was Jessica and Yitka. And let me just share the screen really quickly. All right, and find your mirror board, which isn't this one, isn't that one. at this one. All right. Cool.
Great. So the group actually asked me to talk about what we had discussed. So in terms of strengths, the group identified a pretty robust center of activity or center of gravity that already kind of exists and working around strengthening that. Also really looking at how to improve bike and ped improvements throughout the district, especially along Central, and then as well as looking to the rim, the Canyon Rim Trail, and how to engage that further and create connections within the downtown. The idea, although we didn't get too far on placing a lot of the building footprints, was really to allow for a lot of mixed use development that accommodated retail, mixed use housing, but to do it within reason. So to be careful about how much density the downtown boundary can really accommodate. To be really cognizant of public spaces and things that are going to bring people downtown. There was a lot of discussion about the communities already has a lot of outdoor engagement, and there's a big culture for outdoor activities here, and to encourage that and encourage things like birding and really activities for young people and young families downtown, and to create spaces that are going to bring those users downtown. In terms of weaknesses, we talked about, we didn't identify enough places for things to happen outdoors. Birding in particular came up. And then the lack of incorporating environmental design and elements within the downtown. So really looking at how new housing design or development in general can be more environmentally friendly. One of the big things was to really look at how to continue to encourage large events downtown, and then the inability for downtown to really attract a variety of businesses, and how to do that going forward. And I think I captured everything, but if someone else has anything else I missed, feel free to chime in.
Cool. Are there any questions from the other groups? Or should we do the presenting of the other concepts first and then ask questions? I guess let's share the other group. Let's do Carrie and Will, group number 2 next, and let me zoom to your board. All right. Who is the volunteer to present?
I'll present. I know that people, unless someone else jumps in, wants to present from our group. We had a lively discussion. Our framework eventually centered around these idea of districts, an office district, a retail and restaurant district. And so that, and really identifying this higher density core that stretches from Central and 20th Street and Trinity on the south over to the east to the Merrimack Center, and including that area, and really focusing the development in that downtown core area. We had some mixed use developments in Merrimack. We had some good discussions about that, proposing a public arts performance venue at the Hilltop Hotel site as a gateway feature to the downtown area. And then including some new housing and some micro retail on the south side of Trinity, yes, in that area over there. So those are the main concepts. We talked some about a strong pedestrian link across Central to Trinity in the vicinity of the Merrimack property, along with the extension of the Rim Trail and the connections. Paul made a really good perception about that we're not really taking advantage of the views from the Rim Trail and the development potential along the rim, noting and Greg talked about how that detention pond at the Smiths is actually a real lost opportunity in terms of new development in the downtown area and creating a park there that seems to be originally part of the agreement for the Smiths development there. Did I leave any big pieces out, my fellow designers tonight? All right.
Cool.
Got it, Will. Thank you.
Okay, let's have Kate's group next. Let me find.
We elected Jeremy to speak. If he wants to unmute.
Kate, is this your board?
Okay, I think I did unmute.
No, that's not ours.
We've got all the circles.
All the circles. This one.
No.
Nope.
Nope.
Crap. Okay.
We've got a few ovals with the circles.
It seems like those
The
boards
left.
have
And
multiple
down,
lines.
yeah.
Okay. Whew. Sorry about that. Voila, take it away.
All right, that's thank you. I'm apparently the first non-DPS speaker that's been volunteered. So to highlight some of our positive things first, so we did look at retail space with in a few areas housing above, but really looking at how we can expand some of the retail locations. And so those are really highlighted with the red squares. That's what you see. So on the south side of Trinity, we've got a few options, obviously around the Smiths area. And then some of these other empty lots that are currently, and then what I really like is the southeast side of Central Park Square, that parking lot, huge parking lot. It's an opportunity for some smaller retail locations to go in there just along Central. So that's a really cool location. That parking lot is never 100%, so that may be requiring some rezoning there to make that happen. And then, really encouraging if there's any redevelopment done or rebuilding to have living spaces on the second or the third floor, retail spaces on the bottom, and then, second could be either commercial or retail or commercial office space or housing, depending on the area that's needed. And then we also did look at, kind of the pathways. So really east-west is a lot of high vehicle traffic, but pedestrians go obviously along Central, but looking at how they get from the residential areas to the north side of town to Smiths and to some of those retail spaces along Central, along Trinity. And there is that need for pedestrians and bikes to get safely across Trinity. That's a huge one. And then just really along those corridors there, tying in the green space trail. And that kind of brings us along to that south border along there. That retaining pond just behind Smiths. I tried fishing there once. Terrible fishing. There's nothing in there. I don't recommend it. So maybe we can open it up to canoeing or something. But that is kind of an open space that potentially, as we're leading into the housing and along DP Road, and there's a lot of retail spaces along DP Road, but really to draw that traffic past Smiths and then down that area as well. So those were the main parts. I'm looking at my notes. Parking is another big issue. So if we can encourage underground parking or leveled parking in some of these spaces that we already have available, because we know, everything's so condensed downtown and space is limited. So, if there's parking needed, look at various levels of doing that parking. And then really our biggest negative is just green space. We want more green space. And that came up in the first workshop that we did, was like, people want art and people want shade, and preferably, sitting in the shade looking at art would be ideal. So anywhere that's along these corridors, the sidewalks, the streets, the green spaces, allowing more shade for pedestrians, for bikers, for people that's visiting, just to go and sit and to be in our space. So more green space, I think, is our biggest negative in kind of, especially the southeast side of this map that we're looking at. So I think I covered everything. Kate?
Yeah.
Might just comment that the one big redevelopment area I mean, we circled is basically Hilltop Hotel plus Merrimack together.
Oh yeah.
You
Yeah.
have
So
a pretty significant parcel of land and an
it is,
opportunity
yes.
to basically reorient development along Central a little bit and
Yep.
along Trinity.
Bringing in green space, bringing in a plaza, bringing in, you know, a simple just grassy area would be huge to that in the town. So, you know, but it's private. How much influence can we have on what they do or what they don't do? And you know, if we say the code has to have, you know, so much permeable ground, so much grass, then you know, then it needs to happen. So that would be amazing for that part, especially from all those high density residents that live just to the north of Central there.
Very cool. Thank you, Jeremy. That was very awesome that you stepped up.
I know. Thanks, Jeremy. Good job.
Thank you.
So does any of the groups have questions or comments concerning the other people's concepts? Anything anybody want to say?
I saw that Judy made a comment here that I thought was really awesome. In our group, it was mentioned that the detention pond by Smith's was a missed opportunity. And in her comment, she was saying that this is the best birding area in Los Alamos in terms of the number of species. So that was definitely not a perspective that we were looking at in our group. So it is utilized, just not in the way that we had been considering. So maybe enhancing that so that it can be more than just a detention pond, but that everyone can know how amazing it is too and use it.
Cool, thanks, Jenna.
I have a
Katrina-
question. Can I ask you a question to the second group? I was just a little confused. Did they mean to separate restaurants and retail from like offices, or were they looking to separate restaurants from retail and their districting?
And I don't know if Lauren is still on the line, but I'd like Lauren to, because Lauren was kind of pitched the idea originally. So
Exactly.
Subtle question, so.
Yeah, I'm still here. So the intention would not be to break up retail and restaurants, but to create more high density districts that have retail and restaurants in close proximity to each other to really encourage, you know, pedestrians to come down to the Main Street district and shop and eat, and then move the office spaces to another strategic area in town that serves a different purpose.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying. I like that idea.
Nice.
I had one comment, if I can, from the zone rewrite. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So, is this idea of building height, and we've thrown this around for a variety for the last 10 years or so. But I think it's not really something from my perspective tonight to really get people's feedback on, or maybe it is, but someone has asked, can I build a 10-story building in place of the Merrimack, and as long as it's parked? And the truth is, or I should say, the data is that we don't have a lot of land in town, and if the demand is there for townhome, condo, apartment, to create a you know, to be in our downtown, is that problematic? And it's, I guess that's not really the question. I don't really what the question is, but that's something that's going to be looked at in terms of our zoning rewrite. And I don't know if anyone talked about that this evening, but do we have any comments on that?
Well, I don't think we should be allowing 10-story buildings anywhere in town. I mean, it's bad enough what's gone on in the last 4 years that we basically turned our downtown into a concrete jungle. Building high rises like that would just take away even more from the small town feel. And just to clarify something, I'll have to go downtown tomorrow and check out that flow off reservoir or whatever behind, because I don't know anything about that. What I was talking about the park was actually the parcel of land that's vacant, that's directly south of McDonald's. Not the parcel in the middle, but the one furthest to the south is where, you know, Kroger absolutely promised a family park to be built there in exchange for getting the infrastructure for Smith's.
Very good. I think really what this question for me and for our staff in the county planning division is, we should probably devise some questions around that between now and the end of our whole process here that can figure out how folks feel about height and within reason, of course, because we are who we are. We're not Manhattan, so we're not talking about that. We're just talking about densities. So thank you. Well, I appreciate it, and folks, for that.
Well, something that I'd like to comment on, I don't know if it's been discussed either, is so we have a very steep driveway that's north facing. I don't know how much thought has gone into making sure there's not shadows cast. Because anything north facing is not going to see the sun and melt in the wintertime. And the taller the buildings, the worse the problem is going to become.
Without a doubt. Absolutely.
Yep. All right, in the interest of time, this was really great. And thank you everyone for joining and working together, figure this kind of out. I know there's still a lot of open questions, but we also have still some land to cover to get this plan together. We have the website up here, so losalamosconnect.org. We are gonna upload the recording of the session, the goals, and any drafts that are being created and any other opportunities that are there for input will be on the website. And then in terms of next steps, we will have a council work session October 27. So if you want to participate, we will be presenting some of our first findings. There will not be any like done concepts or anything. It will be more of a, this is what we heard, what do you think, for council. So if you want to participate on that, join us. Otherwise, we will be keeping you updated on any concepts and drafts. They will be posted to the website, and the county has been really good about sending out notifications to everyone, and just keep your eye open for news on this project.
And any additional input you have, we totally welcome it. And I know that this format is new to all of us. I really appreciate everyone sticking with it and sacrificing their Tuesday evening to do this. So thank you, and let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah, one last thing, we have like a do-it-yourself kit on the website, which will be up until Friday. So if you feel like you haven't gotten all your thoughts on paper, you can print it out and like scribble on it and send it back to us. Yeah. And with that, sorry.
They are also at the county building.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anita.
Pick them up there.
Yep. So thank you very much. And also for all the helpers that did the mirror board scribbling, scratching. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Everybody.
Bye.
Everybody have a beautiful evening. Stay well.
Thank you. You too.